For years, the image of the perfect startup founder has been remarkably consistent. We picture a 20-something college dropout surrounded by half-empty energy drinks, typing away in a chaotic dorm room. The entire venture capital ecosystem spent decades aggressively funding this specific archetype. There was a solid, practical reason for this preference. Building the early digital infrastructure required highly specialized, intense software engineering skills that mostly belonged to young computer science students. These young builders operated from what's called first principles, meaning they tackled problems from a blank slate. Because they had no prior career experience, they carried zero industry dogma, allowing them to imagine entirely new digital platforms without being tied to how things used to be done. For the past 20 years, a total lack of traditional industry experience was treated as a founder's greatest asset. Today, the pre-seed and seed funding ecosystems are starting to miss major opportunities by stubbornly clinging to that exact same playbook. The blank slate approach struggles when it encounters deeply entrenched, highly irritating problems within older, traditional consumer industries. If you haven't worked in those specific fields, you simply don't know where the most acute pain points are. You can't identify the exact annoyances that legacy customers are actually willing to pay money to fix because you haven't lived through them. The raw, specialized coding abilities that successfully built the internet's infrastructure are no longer the correct tools for reinventing these established consumer markets. A major technological shift has broken the historical bottleneck of building a company. Modern AI coding tools are doing the heavy lifting. These systems commoditize technical execution, allowing non-engineers to spin up working software in a fraction of the time. This diagram illustrates the shift. On the left, we see a traditional software engineering roadmap that took 6 solid months to complete. On the right, that exact same prototype is now built in a 48-hour AI cycle. Because the actual coding is no longer the obstacle, the true bottleneck moves entirely over to market insight. With technical execution fully democratized, Silicon Valley's premium has moved away from knowing how to build a product and placed all the value on knowing exactly what product needs to be built. This creates an opening for a very different type of founder, the mid-career operator, known as the domain expert. These operators have spent a decade or more working inside a specific industry. That time gives them a tested, incredibly precise map of the exact problems consumers want solved. They also come equipped with a mature, established network. They know which vendors to trust, which PR agencies to hire, and exactly who to recruit. A young founder operating purely on first principles has to spend years banging on doors just trying to break into that industry and understand those relationships from the outside. The very industry dogma that venture capital previously viewed as a stubborn weakness is now proving to be a highly valuable blueprint for actual disruption. Right now, the foundation of the artificial intelligence boom is almost completely dominated by a few massive generalized model companies. This visualization shows the current AI tech stack. At the bottom, we have massive foundational models, but up at the top, there is a glaring empty gap labeled the application layer. Bridging this gap to real-world consumer needs requires highly localized, specialized domain knowledge. Tech generalists and the giant AI labs are struggling to build these tools because they lack the granular daily knowledge of what legacy consumers actually require. The next major consumer companies are highly likely to be built by frustrated industry veterans who finally have the tools to redesign their own fields. The broader implication here is that the traditional barriers to entry in Silicon Valley have collapsed. Individuals no longer need to check conventional boxes, spend years learning advanced syntax, or wait for a venture capitalist's permission just to build a functional prototype. This dynamic applies to the money, too. New, nimble funds and solo investors are bypassing the old venture capital structures entirely to directly fund these mid-career experts. In an environment where artificial intelligence writes the code, the greatest advantage a startup can have is a deep, hard-earned mastery of the problem itself. If you have spent years mastering a domain and you see a clear solution, the only thing left to do is build it.